Hello, everyone. My name is Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak, said woman. I'm awfully glad to talk with you today. I think we're talking about an important subject today. We are talking about, we're in the process of talking about authenticity, the real authenticity of who we really are. But before I thoroughly exhaust that subject like we often do on these shows, I need to put on the table that there is a big block to authenticity, which is the imposter syndrome. So we can't really go fully into the authenticity and the things that I want to tell you there until we address this, because it's a big block to getting there, you know? And so that's where we'll start today. We're going to open our discussion. I will exhaust this subject, so I would imagine we will be doing it for several weeks. But we'll see. We're going to see how it goes. I am live today. Good news to me, huh? I am. I'm alive at 347-850-1647. If you'd like to talk with me, I'm right here. And I hope everybody had good holidays. I don't know when you'll be watching the show. All our shows are on Blog Talk Radio, on Facebook Live, and on YouTube. They're all archived on these channels. So if you are interested in hearing all of our other shows, please listen. If you miss just half of this one, go back and listen. They're all available to you. So sometimes the video quality isn't that good because I am often in a place where it isn't good. But it's so funny. I'm sitting here in the middle of a big city, and it goes down, our service goes down here as much as any place else. So my recommendation to you is go to our website, marthanovak.com, and go under radio shows and just be prepared to toggle back and forth if we lose a feed. Hopefully we won't, but you never know. All right, let's do a prayer to get us all on the same page, and then I'll start talking about the imposter syndrome. Certainly give me a call, 347-850-1647, if you all would like to talk about anything. Dear God, thank you so much for our being here together today under the banner of knowing ourselves more, knowing you more, seeing how it all works. The ego child's mind, the higher self, how one is a continuation of the other with more wisdom and love at its base. We thank you so much for all of this as we open ourselves to new information. We ask that in some of this information, a very clear plan emerges for us of whatever the next step is that we must do. We thank you so much for all of this. And now we give up knowing anything for 90 minutes, for it is the you through us and through all things, in other words, the highest self of us, that can receive the information, can know how to use the information, and knows what we must do in spite of our fear that may exist in the ego child's mind. So open us to that, dear God, and to new information, and we thank you so much for all of it. And so it is. Amen. Okay, here we go. I have several sources to quote. The first one, nice and simple, always is Wikipedia, because I want to introduce this subject. I read an interesting statistic. I think it was something like 85% of people in the UK had all the characteristics of the imposter syndrome, but only 25% had ever heard of it. So I think we all ought to start there about what it is, how it presents, what the phenomena is all about before we look at tearing it apart, okay? I have, as always, my own opinions about this, and so we will take whatever the presiding article is that I pulled, and Lordy, I pulled a lot of it, but we're going to go past that. And remember that my job is not psychology, my job is not theology, my job is taking very complex subjects and whittling them down to size, and because I am a coach, business and peak performance coach, my job is to help you use that information to get to your potential. That's what I do. We're going to talk more about that as we go, relative specifically to you. I think it's going to be an interesting show, this and next time, okay? So this first source that I'm quoting from is from Wikipedia. They define the imposter syndrome, which is what it's commonly called, as a psychological pattern in which one doubts one's accomplishments and has persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Now, this is despite evidence to the contrary. You might be doing very well in your home. You might be doing very well at your business. You might be doing very well in school. So, despite evidence of your competence, the fear of being exposed is still there. It remains a convincing agent that says that you are a fraud and you don't deserve what you've achieved. Individuals with this incorrectly attribute their success to luck or as a result of deceiving others into thinking they are more intelligent than they are with their charm. I think this is such an important thing to address, because if we cannot see ourselves realistically and clearly, we've really got a block to the authentic self that we are. There's something quite confusing about this too, because here I say, go toward your authentic self. It's the thing that is the purest form of you as God, changing your mind, using this higher mind, right? I say that to you. However, a lot of times, because of our childhoods, because of things, incidents that have happened there, we get confused. And we think that people will vilify our authentic selves and that we will be punished for being our authentic selves. One of my dear students yesterday told me a story, this in my advanced class. By the way, we teach these classes, so if you're interested, you must contact me through the website, marthanovak.com, and I will be delighted to talk with you about these things. All right. And we're going to be doing some online classes. Those are coming up too, so that's pretty exciting. So no matter where in the United States you are, you can partake. All right. Going back to this, she told me a story that was very hurtful to her and even to me when I heard it. She said that when she was a girl, her sister had done something absolutely egregious, I don't know what, and that her mother punished her for it, even though she was truthful. She was the one that was in the right here, had no involvement in whatever the egregious act was. She said she very much learned from that her authentic self was not safe in the world. And I think more than that, we talked about how it mixed up truth and lies. It was like and it gave her a sense of futility, that no matter what she did, she was still going to be punished, because this went on more than once in her home, that she was blamed for something she didn't do. That's a good start of an imposter syndrome, when you don't trust the authentic self not to get you in trouble, because here we are saying it's a clear road right to your authentic self, and you're going, no, I don't even want to go there. You're mixing up what really happened back then. The fact of the matter is, and we really don't know the fact of the matter because we weren't there in seeing what happened, but her perception was what I have told you. Now let's open that a little bit and say her mother could have been having a really bad day. As a matter of fact, her mother could have been chronically having a bad day. Took it out on her children. Took it out on this one particularly because the other one was her favorite. Let's just face facts here. Now, I don't know whether any of those things are true, but I'm talking off the top of my head here to say they're mitigating factors in everything, but a child always takes everything personally. Now, you're charged as the adult not to do that, to see more. And that's what consciousness does. Consciousness opens the door for you seeing things in a context. So you don't have to take things personally anymore. But one of the cognitive distortions is what? Taking things personally, right? Very important. So, let's go back to talking about this. It was very interesting. Two women wrote an article, Dr. Pauline R. Clance and Dr. Suzanne A. Imes. This was back in 1978. They coined the phrase, the imposter syndrome. They noticed it. They studied 150 women and thought at the time, and erroneously, that this was a woman's problem. It was certainly not. Science has now borne out the fact that as many men have it as women, so it has nothing to do with that. There are interesting studies that are going on about people in minorities and how this relates to them, because it would. You have other mitigating factors, of course, coming into that, right? You know, kind of a cultural phenomenon of what they think that society thinks about them, which is a mitigating factor to them. The imposter syndrome. So we're going to talk a lot about this today. They defined, these two women, defined the phenomenon as an individual experience of self-perceived intellectual phoniness. Actually, I'm going to say the imposter syndrome that I deal with is not just intellectual. It is right across the board. You're just not good enough. You say to yourself, oops, something happened, and all of a sudden Blog Talk Radio disappeared. Let me bring it back. There you are. Okay. The 150 women, by the way, that these women studied were very high-achieving, successful women. Interesting, huh? That the majority of them had this. Now, these doctors believed that this mental framework for the imposter syndrome developed from factors such as gender stereotypes, early family dynamics, I say yes, culture, and attribution style. The researchers determined that the women who experienced imposter phenomenon showcase symptoms related also to, and you need to know this goes along with it, depression, generalized anxiety, and low self-confidence. Doesn't it stand to reason that if you're not being who you really are and letting it all hang out there no matter what, if you're trying to cover up your vulnerable center, which we all have. Well, hello, Jay. How are you? Morning to you, too. I'm so glad that you're listening in. This is our friend Jay from Canada. Those of you that are on Blog Talk Radio, and that might be new to me, by the way, you need to know that I am responding not only to the phone calls that come in, you'll hear those, but to wonderful messages like from my friend Jay from all over the world, and we try to acknowledge that certainly on the air. Okay, so we've got a problem here, because if you're not being your authentic self, if you're not being real, and by the way, this is a higher self real than a lower self real. I can't tell you how many people in ego say, I have to speak my truth. And it's the energy. Well, Michelle, good morning to you too, my darling. It's the energy behind it that shows that's a fear base. I have to speak my truth means you're just afraid you're not going to be heard. The fact is, in the higher realms, nobody has to use a phrase like that. You just go about living in your highest state of love and wisdom and beneficence of God. We all have it. Nobody's denied it. And so we're trying to get you there, which is your real self, because the things that belong, you have four bodies: the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual body. The spiritual body is the energetic body, and it's actually all bodies, and that's why that when the physical body dies, it can ascend and be its own self, right, with all the information that the other bodies gathered to it. All right. What belongs in the emotional body are things like awe and unconditional love and forgiveness and compassion and things like that. If you want to read more about all this, certainly please pick up my book called, and it's on my website, it's called The Life You Want. It'll tell you all about this in detail, in a lot more detail than I can give you on a radio show. But anyway, those are the things that belong in the emotional body. It's like a good garden with just the things in it that are beautiful and nourishing that you want to grow there. It's going well, right? But what happens to a garden if you don't tend it? I can speak from fact, because this is what my garden looks like right now until I weed it out. Weeds grow in it, things grow in it that you don't want, and they steal the nutrients from the things that you do want in that, right? Well, the spiritual path, this thing that we're calling the emotional body, is the same way, because you have formed judgments about life based on the appearances of what they seemed, because you don't have a developed mind until you're 7 or 8 years old, when these issues are formed that go with you the rest of your life until they're addressed. You form opinions based out of fear. And these things steal nutrients from some of those things I just named, like unconditional love and compassion and the awe of how the system works, and much, much more. So, and compassion is huge. Compassion is huge when you are on the path to consciousness and to the ultimate gain, which is authenticity. So, going back to what I am saying is, when you have things like fear of failure, fear of success, fear of making money, fear of not having any money, fear of your father, rage at your father, disgust with your mother's behavior, any of those things and lots more ad infinitum are part of the ecosystem, which is extremely important for you. Keeps you alive, keeps you understanding your world, right? Everything is relative to you, so you did it all, by the way. That's what your body tells you. I'm not telling you that, of course. But because you personalize everything is your fault. You see nothing in context, right? And so what happens is that, oh, good morning, Kat. I love hearing from you. Thank you so much, sweetheart. So what happens is we clutter this emotional body, and all of a sudden the preponderance of energy is in the emotional body. So there's just these little emotional hot messes running around, right? Now what happens in consciousness work is those things get resolved. Those things get seen in context. Those things get addressed. Where does that energy go once they are? It goes into the spiritual body. And so we wake up then as a spiritual being in physical form, and not the other way around, not the physical being that just thinks about spirituality once in a while and really it has no bearing on our lives. If it does, it's in fantasy where you really can't use it. It's just something we run to feel better. So we've got to get all this straight, guys. We've got to get that emotional body addressed and relieved. And one of the things that is in it is this imposter syndrome. Now, some people live their whole lives with the imposter syndrome, and sometimes it just comes out in certain events, and then it goes back. It's never really addressed, so it just kind of lies dormant, and then here it comes again when we try something new, right? Get a new job, have a new relationship, something like that. The fact is, we need to address it once and for all. It's mixed in with some things you really don't want, like we talked about, anxiety and depression, and certainly low self-confidence. In current research, the imposter syndrome is studied as a reaction to certain stimuli and events. It occurs in an individual. However, it is not a mental disorder. I want to put that on the table right now. It's just a phenomenon. All right, this is my opinion, nobody else's. This is a phenomenon that occurs because you're not in your right mind, the higher self mind. It is a phenomena of the child fear-based mind. It absolutely is. In the higher self, it doesn't exist. So it's just part of your humanness in the egoic child's mind experience. That's all it is. All right. Keep in mind when we talk about the imposter syndrome, we are talking about a fear-based experience. Fear-based experience is the ego child's mind experience. It's supposed to be there. It's supposed to be there. When we're little kids, we're nothing but fear-based. We're little. We have no power. There's nothing to us, really, you know. We're trying to make our way. It's us relative to everything in the world. It's us that's our fault if things like they hurt us and it doesn't work right, right? I mean, because all we see is ourselves. So it takes the higher mind. It takes all of us going, well, is that really true? And it's only true on the egoic child's mind level, but there's another mind in you that is so much more powerful than that works in the energy of the beneficence of God. That's who you are. That's the authenticity. That's the reality. And it doesn't have all of these, this emotional clutter to it. By the time you have really achieved that, not just touched on it once in a while, but really achieved that and are working in it, all these anxieties that are old and ancient, all these ways of seeing the world, the depression and the low self-esteem, those things don't exist in the higher mind. So I learned a long time ago that while we can talk about it ad infinitum, the truth is, if I can just get you there, wow, you're going to do real well. But you can't do that without our addressing what's wrong. So that's what we're talking about right now. Clance, Dr. Clance, explained that the imposter syndrome follows 6 dimensions. And I do think this is enormously interesting. One is called I can give you these, I'll reel them off, but we'll talk about them in just a minute. The imposter cycle. Wow, wait till you hear that one. The need to be special or the best. The characteristics of Superman or Superwoman. Fear of failure. Who didn't guess that was in there, right? Denial of ability and discounting praise, and feeling fear and guilt about success. All right. I want to talk about the imposter cycle for a minute because this is fascinating and it's important. You all may want to get a piece of paper and a pen because you might want to draw a little graphic of this. Okay? It's going to loop around in a circle, but it's going to go straight first and then it'll go whoop and go back to its inception. All right. This is Clance's description, and I think it's so good. It begins with an achievement-related task. It can be anything. It could be having a great relationship with a new person. It could be getting a new job. It could be getting a new project at work. It could be something if you're still in school, all right? But put that at the top, achievement-related task. It starts with that. You've got to do that, all right? This is what sets it off. Once one has gotten that assignment, the next thing, write it down, is feelings of anxiety, self-doubt, and worry immediately follow that. Can I do this? Do I have enough? Do I have what it takes? Okay. This cycle, right there, accounts for two possible reactions that stem from these feelings. So underneath, you're going to do that, right? So one of the stems is that one will respond either by, here's the word, over preparation. Write that down. Over preparation. Over here, under that stem, procrastination. If one responds with procrastination, this initial response will turn into a frantic effort to complete the job. So you might want to say frantic effort. All right? Once the task has been completed, there will be a brief period of accomplishment, a feeling of relief, but very brief. If positive feedback is given to what you did, you will discount the positive feedback. That goes under that too. Now, if you responded to the task with over-preparation, now we're on the other stem, the successful outcome will be seen as a result of hard work. Just makes you work harder, doesn't it? Okay. You wonder why you're on some sort of hamster wheel, right? Okay. If one responds by procrastination, one will view the outcome as a matter of luck. In the imposter cycle, gaining success through hard work or luck is interpreted as a matter of true personal ability. Luck is not interpreted as a matter of true personal ability. This means that it doesn't matter which mechanism one used to complete the task, does it? Even if the outcome results in a positive response, the feedback given has no effect on one's perception of what one did. You see? It is a lose-lose. Guys, the feeling of futility is always set up in a lose-lose situation. You understand? You've just created one. No matter what you do, the results are the same. So, this leads, what we've just talked about, leads to discounting positive feedback. No, it was luck. A lot of mitigating factors. Everybody in my team was as good as I did. I had very little to do with it. This sequence of events serves as a reinforcement because it's a cycle. Cycles reinforce, causing the cycle to remain in motion, you see. With every cycle, feelings of perceived fraudulence, increased self-doubt, depression, and anxiety accumulate. And as the cycle continues, according to Wikipedia, increased success leads to the intensification of feeling like fraud. This experience causes one to remain haunted by one's lack of perceived personal ability, believing that at any point one can be exposed for who one thinks one really is, keeps the cycle going. And I will go on to say, entrenches it. Every time you use anything like this, it entrenches it. That means the rut gets deeper. You see? Keep in mind that using this way, there was the column, create something else out to the side, which is more anxiety, and all this that we're talking about. Entrenchment, more anxiety, more depression, more self-doubt, more low self-esteem, and that leads us right back into pretending again, putting on even a bigger mask, being even more self-effacing, feeling like you're nothing, covering it up in some way, shape, or form, right? So we've simply got to address this right now. This is not good that we do. It's interesting that now that we're talking about this phenomena, it is a phenomena absolutely that men are using and women are using as well. I'm going back to the list that I just gave you. I think the rest of it is pretty, the need to be special or the best. I want to address some of these just to make sure that you thoroughly understand where I'm going with them. I had a woman who, she's the first one I think about with something like this. She felt very awkward. She was in a new school when she was young. She was a lot taller than anybody else. When the other girls hurt her feelings, and apparently there were some mean girls there, her mother and father, but particularly her mother, who was her primary influence, told her to be the smartest. If she was the smartest and the best and always did her work and everything else, by God, nobody could touch her. That was where she was going to distinguish herself. She was special in that way. And she is a very smart woman, but her mother did quite the number on her in that. Because that's not all there is to life. That's not the well-rounded life, is it? No. So she has given herself tremendous anxiety all through these years to be the perfectionist, to do things the very best, to be the smartest, to know more than anybody else, to have put the world together, to research, got all the information, be able to talk about this, Okay. She also fed into the next thing, which was the characteristic of Superman, Superwoman. And that is when she gave a dinner party, she worried about that for a month before. She made herself crazy. Her family couldn't stand being around her when she gave any kind of function because they had to be perfect. And they couldn't live in their own house with, in any kind of normal way. When the party came, she was so exhausted and so worried about everything, she never enjoyed it. She never did enjoy her friends. It's real interesting. You live life and certain things happen to you. You observe things. I was lucky enough to have a grandmother and a mom. And I remember when my grandmother gave her party, she was always worried about food. She wanted the food to be great. This was kind of before catering, right? She wanted the food to be, wow. So that was where all of her energy went. My mother's energy went into making sure the house was perfect. And I don't care about any of those things. I mean, I want us to have good food on the table, but I'll hire a caterer. I don't have to do it, right? What I care about is that you have a good time. The involvement has come down to me, and that's what I feel. I want us all to have a good time together. That's the most important thing to me. This characteristic of Superman and Superwoman, you just aren't. Sorry. Neither am I. Nobody is. And it is putting self-imposed standards on our lives that, guys, are impractical, that we'll never meet. You're going to always be a failure. You're always going to, because you're a failure in some of these things, it digs the trench deeper because you succeed. And once in a while when you do this, you say, see, there's my payoff, but you don't stay there long enough to see it's a payoff that you're exhausted in, because you're just throwing yourself right back into doing it again because you think you have to, because you got to pay off. It doesn't make any sense. And we've got to break the Superman, Superwoman phenomenon. There is something much more important than that, and that is being real in the moment. Being real this moment, being real the next one, being real the next one. That's all there is, being real. And that comes before being your highest self and stepping over that line into your field of excellence, into the fields of excellence, I should say, because I'm talking about an energy, a way to live energetically on a higher level. Okay, the fear of failure. I don't know anybody that doesn't have that, but it is a closed-minded failure. It's a child's form of failing, and you failed, and and you keep in mind the pathological thing about this is you didn't just fail the geography test. You failed as a human being. That's what happens when you cross the line, and just the phenomenon becomes a blow to your character. That's not good, ladies and gentlemen. You need to recognize when you've done that. You know, you're not a failure because you failed a geography test. You failed a geography test. So what? Who cares? Don't you get that? It has nothing to do with how bad or good you are, how smart or dumb you are, whether you're a failure or a success. In fact, I want to put on the table, and I've said this before, that there's no such thing as failure if you learn from it. There sure is if you go home and you do nothing but beat yourself up. And if you're beating yourself up, you're not learning anything. Darlings, I myself, I failed so many times. I could list them. Why? I tried to every single time learn something and do it differently the next time. And I'm still doing that. Learn something from what you perceive as a failure, and it's not a failure anymore. We've got to come out of that child's mindset of seeing failure as we did when we were children, as a pronouncement on your character, as a self-attack. We cannot use it that way anymore. We must stop ourselves. And that's where a certain amount of mind control comes in here, you see? Okay. Denial of ability and discounting praise. You know, all this is tricky in the end, and I say that because of this. Narcissists receive, love praise. Oh, well, hello, Mohammed. I'm so glad that you're with us today. Thank you so much for being here. Narcissists love, love the love praise. They think they're better than. Sometimes because they think they're worse than. So this is not, denial of ability and discounting praise is not cured by your going 180 degrees in the opposite direction. Again, there is a sacred phenomenon going on here, which is what's staying real, being real, staying in the reality of you, of the situation. It's in the middle, not at one of the extremes. I think when my husband is an Austrian, he's Catholic, and he said something in the early part of our marriage about he was so happy, but he didn't want to show how happy he was because he didn't want to tempt the gods, which I thought was hilarious coming from a little mass boy, right? That's what we call him still when some of these things come up, mass boy. And I see I've just gotten a phone call too. I'll go to that in a moment. And, if you're believing that, if you believe you're going to be squashed because you're too happy, that is something that needs to be addressed in energy counseling and energy work for you, because we want you to be very happy. Life is a series of moments. Some of them are happy, some of them are not happy, but to deny any of them is to deny a whole life. We can't do that and be happy. We can't, here we are saying, well, you're depressed, you feel futile, you have low self-esteem, you have anxiety. Look at that. Look at any of these things as something that we're doing, you see. I'm coming to the phone call in just a minute, guys, so hang on. One more thing. The feelings of fear and guilt about success. I want to address that for a moment because that's just silly. The world would not evolve if we were not afraid, if we were afraid to move past that. But a lot of times if we see our dad working hard and we love him very much and he grew up in the Depression and oh my God, the story goes on and on and on. We can feel guilty about our own success, but everybody has their choice to do as they want. And certainly circumstances influence, but we think we have the ability to live the life we want. We always have. We always will. We always will. You all have great brains all over the world. I'm talking to every one of you. You're smart, good-hearted, wonderful, interesting people that have your own talents and gifts and abilities. Now use them. That's what you're here for. And if you are worried about feeling guilt, you're going to have to look at your narcissism, because the guilt and fear about success and about going on and going past someone else is really so much narcissism, isn't it? Because you're comparing yourself to other people. That's narcissism. You have to, add your own value. It's about you and what value you're adding in this moment, what you're learning, what you're doing, what's going on right here, right now. It's not about what you think it's about, all this comparison, you see? Okay. Now, let's go to our phone call, and then I will keep going with our talk. I have a pen somewhere. There it is. Hi, I'm Martha Novak, and I'm talking to a 519 exchange. To whom am I speaking?
Hi, Martha. This is Jennifer. I was just listening.
Oh, hey, Jennifer. I haven't talked to you in a long time. How are you?
Good. Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you, sweetheart. Did you have a good one?
Thank you. It was good. I like to keep things low key, and every new year you can revisit your bucket list and decide, okay, I still want to go ahead with that or not or whatever.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
It's
so interesting that you say that, because I feel that way too. I always feel, and this doesn't have to be anybody but me or you, but I always like New Year's Eve to be quiet. I always like to be very introspective. I like to be quiet. I don't like to do anything. I like to, on some level of my being, consciously and subconsciously, I'd like to assess. I like to, thank God for the year, and look ahead to and open to the joys to come. This year, because my daughter was visiting from Austria, I didn't get to do that. We went to a party, and it was quite the party. It really was. Dancing, everybody, it was hilarious. It was fun. It was loads of fun. But I missed that moment. So it was really interesting, because when she was going home the next day, I very much needed my husband to go on and take her to the airport, because I did need that time. That's a real sacred time to me, and I really missed it. So I took it certainly on the 1st of January, and it meant a lot to me. So anyway, I saw both sides. It was quite the party. I danced. I haven't danced for 25 years, We were all out there dancing just to dance, It was lots of fun. So anyway, darling, do you have any comments about this imposter syndrome that we're talking about today, or authenticity? I know you've done quite a lot of work on yourself, Jennifer.
Yeah, it's funny because I read something that someone published, I think yesterday. It was like some link on Facebook, so I clicked on it. And I went, yeah, a lot of us are afraid to shine. And part of it, I kind of knew it in the back of my mind, but when I read it again, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Part of us wants to make other people feel comfortable, and we don't want to overshadow them. Mm-hmm. So we pull ourselves back a bit so that when we're having a discussion with the person or whatever, we don't come across as intimidating them. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, I am going to put on the table. I understand exactly what you're saying. I think that is an ego child's mind thought. But two things occur to me. Number one, if you're real, if you are in that space of I'm real here, I don't think they'll be intimidated. And if they are, that's their choice. Do you understand that? It isn't about you. Again, we personalize and think it's about us. I don't want to cause that reaction. But the fact is, they have a choice to go, wow, this person's inspirational, or wow, isn't that interesting, or wow, I want to share this piece of information with you too. And they get to rise to the occasion of their excellence if they want. If they don't want and they choose to be intimidated, that's a wonderful thing to put on the table for them. Not that you will put it on the table, but that just your presence is putting it on the table for them, that they have some work to do on themselves. So the second thing I'm thinking about what you're talking about right now is just a practical example, because I'm a business coach, and I occasionally will see something like this, and I want to tell you what I always say, because let's say there are two men or women that are holding the stage together, and one is a senior partner in some way and a great individual and very well respected, and the other is just idolizes this person. All right, I've seen it where the older person doesn't have as much energy. They're not very dynamic. They're just there because, it's a seniority thing. It's an honorary position. It's, they know more about a certain subject, because they've seen a lot. It could be a lot of different reasons. But what happens a lot of times is when that person doesn't have a lot of energy, isn't very dynamic, the younger person pulls in, and it gives the audience no one to watch. Now, I want you to take this in life. It gives the audience no one to watch. It gives the audience nothing to go, wow, or isn't that interesting, or that kind of thing. Somebody's got to be dynamic. So you've got to do who you really are. You've got to be who you really are. That might help raise their energy level. If not, you certainly want to honor them in other ways. For example, an audience's eye always follows movement. So when they're speaking, do not move. Don't even turn your head. Just, stand there or look at them, but don't move, because the audience will be drawn to you. It always is drawn to the person with his highest energy level anyway. So by what you're doing, you're telling the audience what's appropriate. It's appropriate to give your attention and your time and your very focused to this other person. So I think that that's a good metaphor for life. It's not just a metaphor in those situations, it's an actual situation. But I really believe that that you've got to be yourself, and everybody has the potential to be dynamic in their arena. Some people are taking it, some people aren't, but you take it, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, and I, it's a lesson I've learned over time.
Good.
So I've learned that one. So, but I did find it interesting because I didn't actually put two and two together. Well, I maybe kind of did. But, I know that you do have to be your authentic self. But there's also a time, too, where there's no point of it. It's just, let this person, and you got to hold space for people too, right? So
yes, that is a very nice way of putting it. You can hold a space for people, for people to get there. I've said all along, we at one point we cannot tell a young person what to do when they get a certain age, but we can hold a space that all their training, all their knowledge, everything that, all the love that you have had for them and all that, will take root in this space, and they will be who they are and find their way. That's about all we can do at one point, Anyway,
yeah.
Well, Jennifer, I hope you have a very good year.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave the line open so you can listen, because that's what you called in for. You keep in mind, too, that if you go to my website, you don't have to do it now. You're on. You're just fine. But if I'm ever getting a whole lot of calls, and I see I've got a 917 coming in right now, I am delighted for you all to go to my website, marthanovak.com, and if you punch either Facebook Live or Blog Talk Radio, it should feed you right into the show so that you can hear it but don't have to be on the air. But you know what? I'm real delighted you're on the air because I love talking to you, so there we are. Okay, have a wonderful holiday. All right, let's go to our 917 caller.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm fine. My name is Martha. What's your name?
Grace.
Grace. Hi, Grace. I don't believe I've talked to you before,
Hi.
have I?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm currently working in a place. I got transferred like 2 times, and then another time, and now they're transferring me again, and I am not feeling it anymore. I don't want to. I want to work in the place where I was before, like this last transfer. And I'm wondering, like, what can I do? I've asked my supervisor that it's okay for me to fill in for a week, but that I'm not interested in doing this, another new transfer.
What did they say when you said that to them?
I haven't heard anything back yet.
Okay. Well, my advice always, darling, is for you to do exactly what you did. To go to the person and say, look, I love working here and I love adding value here, but I want to stay where I am. I don't mind substituting other places, which is what you did. I always would lead in. You left out this part, but you may have actually done it in real life. So I always lead with the positive. Look, I absolutely love my job, and I absolutely love where I am right now, and I love adding value. There isn't anybody in the world, my darling, who owns a business that doesn't want to hear that. I want to add value from their employees. They want to hear that line, right? And then say exactly what you said. So I'll be interested in seeing what they say to you. If you are moved around again, you have the choice of doing that or finding another job. And, you might want to...
Find another job, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they keep moving me around, just find another job.
Find another thing that you want to do. And there will be a little more, Grace, that I want to tell you about that in this show and also in next Sunday's show. But let me go on and jump ahead and put some things on the table for you. I don't know, do you know your Myers-Briggs and what you are in terms of a personality? Have you done that test before?
Hold on, you're really breaking up. I don't know if it's my phone or if it's your line.
Oh, I don't know either, Dave. Yeah, I don't know either. Let's try this again. This
is better.
Okay. There is a test on the internet. It's free. And it's called, I want you to go to one site called Human Metrics because it's a very short 10-minute tests. And their little explanation is very short as well. It's not too much information because Myers-Briggs is such a marvelous Jungian complicated personality test. It can get quite complicated. I want it to be pretty simple for you. There's a reason that I want it to be simple. There's a lot of noise on your line, darling. I think that's part of the problem. Are you someplace where there's a train or something? Grace? Grace?
Yeah, I only heard my name, Grace.
Okay. Sweetie,
now I can hear you again.
Okay. Why don't you mute your... I don't know whether you can mute your side. I'm hearing a lot of noise from your side.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to mute myself and listen to you.
Okay, that would be great because I've got some information I think will help you, okay? I think it's the noise from the other side that's the interference. At least that's my guess. Me, who knows nothing about anything technical. Thank you so much for calling, Grace. All right, so this is what I want to say to you, dear heart, and to the audience too. There is a test called Myers-Briggs. It's a very, very popular personality test. It's very good. You have to be absolutely in your highest self to take this test. You cannot try to be something you're not. It's 45 to 55% accurate. That's their rating. The reason it is because people are not being real when they take the test. So if you take this test and you say, well, this 75% fits me, but not 25% is missing, you've got a letter wrong because you were pretending. If only 50% fits you, you got a letter wrong because, 2 letters wrong because you are pretending, okay? So I want you to be very, very honest when you take this test. It's the only way it'll work. It's an extremely important test to take, and here's why. And if you will go to, and I'm going to repeat this because I don't think you heard it with the sound in the background. I want you to go to Human Metrics, METRICS.com. It's a site that has a lot of little tests. Go to Jung Myers-Briggs, MYERS-Briggs, Jung, Jung, the psychotherapist, Jung Myers-Briggs. Okay, what I want you to do is take that 10-minute test, look at what they've written about you. It's just 1 page because Myers-Briggs can get quite complicated. It can be very complicated, and you'll not be able to find what I'm asking you to find. That's why I want you to go to some simple test and some simple description of what you are. In that description, 1-page description of what you are, there's going to be a sentence that says what your whole life is about, what you think is important in the world. There will be 1 sentence. And what I want you to do is find that 1 sentence, because whatever job you take must have that 1 sentence in it. Yes, hello, Jackie. I will certainly spell that for you. The Jung, Human Metrics is the website. I have nothing to do with this site. It's just a site I use. Human, HUMANMETRICS.com. HumanMetrics.com. The test that you're looking for is Jung, Jung, Myers, MYERS, Briggs, BRIGGS. Jung Myers-Briggs. Again, you can read all about yourself once you know what you are. But this is a tricky test. Now, I am going to urge you to prepare yourself, to be honest with yourself. Nobody's going to see this but you. But if you don't find out who you really are and what you really think is important in the world, you'll never find fulfillment in your job, because your job has to have that element in it. Certainly, darling, anytime. My Myers-Briggs is I am an INFP. That means I'm an introvert. Believe it or not, I am an introvert, an intuitive. It means that I am a feeler. I am an empath. I can feel very strongly, and I'm a perceiver. Okay, that's what I am. You're welcome to read about me if you have any interest in that. INFP. When I look at that and look at my life, the only thing that's here's what I'm gonna give you a little quiz right now. All right, but I'm gonna use me as an example in the quiz. I started out as an actor. I was a theater director. I taught people to act. I am a writer of nonfiction and fiction. I am a business coach and teach people how to present themselves beautifully, and I counsel people in consciousness studies and do a lot of emotional counseling. What do all those things have in common? They have one thing in common, and that is I'm always trying to make people's lives better. In the theater, I would often do musical comedy. I made them laugh. I felt that was a very spiritual thing to do. I tried to give them something beautiful to see. I give them something to think about. I like making people's lives better to the best of my ability. I like sharing that. Every single one of those things that I've just mentioned to you have that in common. Well, guess what this INFP finds important? Just that. Now, I have been able to follow that. I've been very lucky in my life to follow that thing. I urge you to think about your own life relative to this as well. In other words, the things that you have really, really, really enjoyed doing in your life, you should write down. You should look at that Myers-Briggs statement. You should find the one sentence that says what your life will be about to be happy, what your true self follows. And I urge you all to do that. I think it's an enormous phenomenon. I've got something real important that I'm not saying right now that I want to say in the end of this show, or certainly in next week's show or the following week, whenever we get to it, about this. But that's a good way to start, you see. We have another call, so I'm going to go to that. So this is let's see if I can, 519 Exchange. Hello, I'm Martha Novak. To whom am I speaking?
Oh, hi, Martha. It's still Jennifer.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jennifer. Well, hello. I'm so confused. I think you went away and then you came back. Okay, I'm going to go to someone else now. I love you very much. Now, I think this is still Grace. Grace, I saw you called back in. Darling, do you have something you want to add? No? Okay. Well, I will not, I'm hearing that noise again, so I'm going to click off and say if you want to call in, by all means do. It's just a little too much noise here. All right. So I hope that gives you some ideas. So you're going to have a lot of ideas by the end of all this talk. But guys, we, in my work, this is just not about telling you what's wrong. It's about fixing it. That's what you do in energy psychology, and that's what we do here. We work with your energy to get you past some of these old beliefs and wake you up and let you see everything in context, and your life gets moving. There isn't anybody that I work with that doesn't say, wow, I'll do it. I remember one man, this was just a little thing. I mean, most of these things are real phenomenal and big, and they say, oh my God, my life is so much richer. I've got so much more, even materially. But this man, I remember, came to me as a business coach. That's really all he wanted. And he absolutely abhorred public speaking. At the end, he was a public speaking hound. He just loved it. He sought every opportunity he possibly could because his brain got right. He started working from his highest self. We got rid of some of the old issues that were lying around, and man, he sailed. There is no reason in the world why you can't either. You see, our lives are all about consciousness, and here's the interesting phenomena. We're either imploding, thinking we can never have it, which is still consciousness, or we are on the path that you all are and why you're listening to a show like this. Everybody has a choice, or you're going back and forth, right? But can everybody do this? Look, I'm the poster child for this work. Yes, everybody can do this. You just have to do it. You have to do it every week. You have to start getting control of things. You can't indulge in the things you've always indulged in. We have to shut those doors and replace them with other things. And that's what we're trying to do in a show like this. I'm not just saying, well, here are your problems, kids. Good luck. That's my problem with so much that's out there these days. What I want to give you is a roadmap. Now, I'm limited on the radio because if you're sitting in front of me in that green chair that's across the room, what this is about is seeing how you are specifically wired for 2 solid hours and changing those wirings. Very gentle. Yeah. And you just start living differently because behavior is energy. Thoughts are energy. Feelings are energy. So if we can change the energy in some way, the behavior changes, the thought changes, the feeling changes. It's a process, though. I need you all to know that. This is not something about just switching on a light switch. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes these are core issues, things that you have had all your life, and they're layers and layers and layers and layers. We got to get them. Okay? We can get them. I'm ventured to say, I just don't think you've ever felt anything that I haven't felt at one time in my life. I had this. one of the reasons that I teach the way I do you remember the construct that I gave you? I'm stopping right here because I want to go back to a construct I think is real important to talk about right now. Here's the construct. And if you want to draw it on the page in front of you, please do. It's extremely important. So take a pen and draw a line at the bottom of your page. I'll explain this construct in a minute. And put contractive over here. Write the word contractive. Okay? And at this on this side, write the word expansive. And underneath the line, I want you to say the ego, child's mind experience. And then I want you to kind of do a funnel up like that from each side, okay? And I want you to put at the top of that funnel the transcendent self, the highest self, mind. And now let me explain what I mean by this, because we're actually talking about this right now. Just in other words, right? All right, here's what I'm saying. The ego experience is all about energy going in contractively and things in the world. It's a very reactive state of being, okay? Because an ego, child's mind state is usually reacting to its environment or react to the inner things that the outer environment has made you react to. So like a memory of the past or something. So contractive energy is not a bad or a good energy, it just is, right? But it's the energy of, say, somebody hurting your feelings and pulling in. It could also be something very nice, like, you know, you and your lover only exist in the world and you're pulling them in for a kiss and nobody else is around, right? All that lovely fade stuff that we see in the movies. Okay. Expansive, neither good nor bad either, just is. It means the energy goes out. This is the energy going in. This is the energy going out. It can be leaving a big tip for a waiter who doesn't deserve it because you feel bad for them. It can be getting angry. It can be anything, but it's the energy going out, the energy going in. That's the egoic experience, all right? So oftentimes, and I'm going to put, I often call the expansive self the queen of the world experience. Okay, or the king of the world experience, depending on your gender. All right, it's not real. It's just not real. It's a fantasy that we go into in the expansive self. By the way, I'm lower than the bottom of a dirty bird cage's fantasy too, if that's part of your contractive experience. So what I'm putting on the table here is we often mix up the queen of the world, king of the world experience with the transcendent experience. Man, the world is going to tell you you're in that energy and it's going to slap you down. And because you're confused about I wasn't in the transcendent experience, because you're confused about this, you think that expansive self is the authentic self. And you start limiting yourself and not doing anything instead of saying, wait a minute, that's the expansive self. I was in the king and queen of the world energy, and that is a fantasy, and I got slapped down for it by the universe because I should have been. And now, and that doesn't mean that you should be punished for it. That means you should be told you're in it. Do you understand it? Understand what I'm saying? The world tells us we're in the wrong energies. Okay, that's great. So we've got to make sure that you're in that love-based, generous, kind, compassionate, awed energy of our potential. Because that's the energy of our potential. But we get them confused until we don't. You keep in mind that ego, child's mind experience, contractive, expansive, is all self-indulgence. So how you determine what mind you're in when you begin this journey, because it can be very confusing. Remember, the ego lies. Oh, no, you really are queen of the world, all right? You really are bottom of the birdcage. Neither is true. The ego, child's mind, is sending up propaganda to keep you safe. It doesn't care whether you're happy. So there's always a sense of futility that goes with it because of the limits and because you are adhering to that limits and to those limits. In the highest self, we learn, wait a minute, there is something beyond this, and I'm going to take a chance on it. And because a good consciousness coach can tell you, oh yeah, you're going to feel this next. This is what's going to happen. Here we're going to get and go here. Oh yeah, I had that too. You're going to be fine. It helps. You know, that really helps. And I feel like sometimes I can really give that to my clients because there was no one there to give that to me. I had to learn all this on my own. That was just the time, you know. Here's the good news about learning it on your own. You really believe it. After a while, you really see, and you have all these experiences because you're searching. And it's a wonderful thing. But I would like it to go easier for you than it did for me. So that's the reason that I do what I do. Okay. Oh, good morning, Shelley. I'm so glad that you're here. I thank you so much for tuning in. All right, moving along as we talk about now the imposter syndrome. There are 6 types of imposter syndrome. And I mentioned one of them, and that's the perfectionist. Actually, I mentioned, I think I've mentioned almost all of these. Well, the perfectionist is one of them. Guys, there's no perfection in the world. The only perfection there is in the world is in the imperfection, knowing that we are all imperfect, but God and the energy that we work with is perfect. That's how this works. So all of our standards in our mind of what the perfection is really has to go, because they're limiting us from being, there's the word again, real. Okay? And real is the first step to authentic. Authentic. The second type of imposter syndrome is the superwoman, superman. We've talked about him or her. The third one is the natural genius. And this is somebody who feels like that they have to live up to being a natural genius. Again, my client's mother did a terrible number on her, saying, well, you might not be the most popular girl in the room, the school, and you probably aren't the prettiest. And you actually was a little worse than that. You're not very pretty, but you can be the smartest, and you can intimidate everybody else because you're the smartest. That's, wow. And she's tried to live up to that ever since. You combine that with the superwoman that she tried to be and the perfectionist she tried to be, and you can understand why she ended up sitting in a green chair, right? Because that's too much pressure. You shouldn't do that. The soloist is the next one, the soloist. This is somebody, and I am thinking of someone in particular, who tries to do everything herself. She tries to find her own issues, and she's pretty reasonably good at it. But you've got to understand something. Your ego child's mind, and if that is the predominant thing here, and it always is until it's not, the ego child's mind does not want you to do anything but what it's telling you you need to do. It's taking credit for your being alive, you see? Instead of realizing that there's a lot more. The ego child's mind knows nothing about the highest self. The highest self knows about the ego child's mind because it's a tiny little dot in the firmament of this huge thing. But it's driving the bus, that little dot. And just like a child who's driving a bus, we have to get on that bus and say, sweetie, I love you to death. Go sit down in one of the seats, because a 7-year-old kid should not be driving the bus and take the car keys away from it. I mean, the bus keys, whatever they're called. We have to learn to love that kid that we are, but not let that kid be in charge anymore. That's part of the transcendence that is going on right now as we seek who we really are in authenticity. The soloist always thinks she needs to do it by herself, or he needs to do it by themselves, that they should know. And that's just a way to deny the experience of learning more, being more, finding out what you need to do next, you know? It's a way to stop the process. Don't be fooled. And then there's the expert. And I want to talk to you all about the expert. I've written some notes down here. You just have to let me find them. It's around. Come on, little expert. Oh, maybe I didn't put it on this sheet. All All right, hang on. I wonder what I did with it. Maybe we'll just have to find it when we have to find it. Well, okay, I can talk to you about what I feel. I just don't know what I did with these notes. I was writing notes all over the place. Here they are. I found them. Isn't it interesting on the air, especially on the radio, hearing somebody search for something? Not very. Okay. All right, let's talk about this that we're talking about right now. Oh my God, I only have 14 minutes left. I had no idea. Well, let me talk about the expert, and then next week I'm going to talk about a lot of this stuff, all right? I think, but owing to the fact that we talked about Myers-Briggs, this is the second part of it that I want to put on the table for you before this is over. Being an expert, thinking you need to be an expert, comparing yourself against people that you call expert is a real mistake. It is not going to serve you. People that are this type of imposter syndrome measure their competence based on what and how much they know or can do. And you keep in mind the secret belief is that they will never know enough, never be enough, and they fear being exposed as inexperienced and not knowledgeable. Okay. I have a very strong opinion about this, and I don't think any of us should be experts. I think the very word is out of the ego child's mind, out of hierarchy, out of narcissism. We are not experts. There's always something else to learn. But we do have, and this is what I want to put on the table, some sort of superpower. And you better know what yours is. As a matter of fact, I think you're going to have 2 or 3 superpowers. And the reason I talked about Myers-Briggs is Myers-Briggs helps you define your superpowers. Now, what do I mean by a superpower? Well, I'm going to tell you, I never thought about this, but I learned something recently. I'm working on my 3rd book. It's a fiction book, and I think it's darn good. I really do. I think it's a really nice different way for me of teaching interesting things. Spiritual book, but very dramatic. All right. So I have a marvelous editor. I just am crazy about this new editor that I've got. And when I sent her the first draft, she wrote back and she said I had a couple of superpowers. She used that word, superpowers. I never thought of anything about superpowers, but superpowers. The superpowers are what you do really well. And one of my superpowers is dialogue. I write great dialogue. Well, I was relieved by that because I've been writing dialogue my whole life. I've either been saying dialogue, other people's dialogues, because I was an actor. I've been coaching good literature for a long time as a director. I listen to people's business speeches and more at work, help them strategize. Words are extremely important to me. I have written, I write the written word a lot. I've written television shows for years and magazine articles and things like that. So you bet I'm probably good at that. I had no idea. You know, one of our spiritual awakenings occurs when we realize, wait a minute, we do something that somebody else doesn't do. We might be good at something that the general public doesn't do. Are there people that write dialogue as well as I? Of course. But I'm one of the good ones. It's important for you to know what your superpowers are too. Now, how do we find that out? And this is what I want to put on the table for you, because don't be an expert, know what your superpowers are. Can you see that the expert, being the expert, is just a replacement for not knowing what your superpowers are? Hi, Lisa. Oh, I'm so glad that you joined us this morning. Good. So you understand what I'm saying. You're either saying, oh, I'm the expert and covering up the fact that you don't feel very expert, or you are finding out what your superpowers are and exploiting them in a good, wholesome way, right? Here's how to find out your superpower, because when I said that even to my advanced class, they all sat there and they saw the wisdom of it, but they went, I have no idea what mine is. So here's my advice. Do Myers-Briggs. Find the one line, there's only one thing, that you realize they're saying this person has to do this to be happy. This person has to work in this arena. Mine is I have to bring value to people's lives in some way. Okay? A second one is I translate hard subjects into simple subjects. By the way, that's not necessarily for you, it's for me. I don't always understand the hard stuff, so I have to whittle it down to size for me, okay? All right. So knowing that that is true, now I look at all the things I've ever enjoyed doing in my life, whether it has been work or whether it's been play. And I've been very lucky. A lot of mine has been work. So I've enjoyed acting, I've enjoyed directing, I've enjoyed writing, I've enjoyed coaching, I've enjoyed training, I've enjoyed directing, I've enjoyed teaching, I enjoy counseling. That's what I do. That's what I tend to do all day long. One of those things or all of them, right? Now, I want to find a theme in that of if all those things, this is what I did with you earlier, of all those things, what's a common thing? A common theme, what they all have in common is I want to bring some sort of value to everybody's lives. I want to make them laugh, want to make them think, want to make them feel better about themselves, want to be supportive, want to say, here's what's wrong, here's how to do it right, here's how to feel better about yourself, here's how to break up that futility. So everything is about me helping people achieve potential, right? So those are that's how to find your superpowers. Take the Myers-Briggs, look at your life, see what your theme is. You know, in script writing, which I have done a lot of, in script writing, you have a plot, which is your story, and you have a theme. It is what things are about on a higher level. You know, Casablanca is about a man who is very selfish and in the egoic child's mind who rises to the occasion of his best self. That's the theme. And actually loves someone enough to give her to another man. Big deal. Put his life even in danger in doing that. You see? So you've got to find the theme for you. What has been the important theme? And then look at it, scrutinize it a little more. So what does all of that have in common? It has in common, for me, words. And she's saying, your superpower is dialogue. Well, why wouldn't it be? Because my whole life has been geared to words. You see? Now, on the second draft of the book, that gave me a lot of power to go back and write dialogue, a lot more dialogue than I did. I was telling the story before. And so she constantly wrote a note saying, this would be better in dialogue, this would be better in dialogue. What are you doing? Dialogue. Tell us what's going on here. Don't just show us. And it made a much better book. I'm saying this to you so you'll begin to open the door of how to work with yourself this way. I think that's extremely important. But if you are so concerned with being the expert or so concerned with any of these types, and we're going to talk about these types in more detail next week, it's in the way. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's in the way of you finding what you need to find. And all of these are steps that you must take toward your authentic self. You are not going to continue to be the imposter. That only exists in the egoic child's mind. It only exists there. So it does tell you what mind you're in, what mind you're doing business with, in what mind you're talking to your loved one in, what mind you are trying to create in. It's going to go better for you if you're in the higher mind. You are not going to get a correct reading on Myers-Briggs if you're not in the higher mind. So tell yourself before you begin, you're going to be 100% honest with yourself, even if it hurts. And nobody's going to see that test but you. But get an accurate reading because your life is waiting. You need some of the information that I'm putting forth so that you can put it all together for yourself ultimately and have a happy life and have some very, very happy work experiences. If you're there 8 hours a day or more, my God, we've got to make sure it's happy, right? Okay. Guys, we have 4 minutes left. I want to thank you so much for being with us. We'll be continuing this, by the way, next week. I think it's an important subject to exhaust on our way to authenticity. We really are already in authenticity, to tell you the truth. We're just talking about some of the aspects that block it that we have to address, right? I do want to thank you very much for supporting the show. Those of you that are listening are doing us a tremendous favor by getting these shows around to other people, sending it out to your mailing list, see who responds to it and who doesn't, telling your friends about it. It means the world. I do want to encourage you that one of the most wonderful things I can recommend is starting a study group around these lessons, because it is in your sharing this. You're sharing your inner self. You're finding some trustworthy individuals that are not judgmental and who are there to listen relative to these individual shows. It's a powerful tool in your healing. Every single therapy modality in the world will tell you that it's important to say these things out loud, to get feedback, to share in a certainly a non-judgmental way about yourself and other people. And I think that these shows are going to give you a good platform to do so. We already have some study groups that are formed. So I encourage you all to do that with like-minded individuals. And, these days, what's so wonderful is we can do that all over the country. We can do it on Skype, can't we? We don't have to just do that in person and have a little coffee clatch with people. We can actually have people from all over the world talk to us and all be together in a group. Guys, thank you for liking us, sharing us. What else do you do? Befriending us. And I've left out one. What is it? Following us. Thank you. I am showing my ignorance of technology. But anyway, thank you for doing all that. This is certainly how to get the word around, and I appreciate it so much. I appreciate all of you that write in, call in, and communicate with me through my website, which is marthanovak.com. I always love hearing from you. If you have any ideas for future shows, I'm delighted to do that as well, to entertain those ideas and do those shows. All right, let's do a quick prayer and send you on your way. Dear God, thank you so much, Shelley, too. I appreciate it. And same to you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for all of your participation. You all mean the world to me. I'm very invested in your well-being, All right, dear God, thank you so much for all of this. We appreciate these dear people who are part of the show. We now ask that in your infinite wisdom and grace and transcendence,
90 seconds.
in your infinite transcendence, that you transmute some of these things that we are now surrendering in part or in whole to the ascended God we are, that we may deepen in our lovingness in every aspect of the ascended God, that we may become more creative, more loving, more kind, more generous, more compassionate, more full of wisdom, that we see more, and
60 seconds.
And that our awareness indeed opens. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of this, and we say this now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of everyone listening to the show today. We thank you, and so it is. Guys, I'm getting a phone call right now that says 757 exchange, but sweetie, I only have 37 more seconds. So please call back next week. I would love to talk with you. I want you to know that. And if you all would just call in early, I am delighted to talk with you. That's the fun part of my job, is talking to you. All right. So I want you to be aware of the imposter syndrome this week. I want you to be aware of the things. We're going to talk next week about how to get over this. But I've given you some tips already.
10 seconds.
Ooh, 10 seconds. All right. Love you very much. Amen, Jackie. Take care. Bye-bye.